Okay, so before I get started, I am just going to pass around some photos here so you guys can kind of reference them. Just some fun history that some of you might be familiar with of Graif Clothing. Sure. Thank you. Okay, so first, Marissa Brostrom, owner of Graif Clothing. Thank you for having me. You guys are all great singers, by the way. I was very impressed with the song. I do want to talk about obviously me and the store and everything, but a lot of people recently have asked about my ownership journey because I bought the business right before the pandemic and what that's been like. And that's kind of seems to be the topic of conversation for most people because it's different being a young female coming into a primarily menswear industry and especially right before a pandemic. So a little bit about myself to start with. I am from St. Clair originally. I'm in St. Peter currently with my husband and 2 kids. We have a dog. Our kids are 3 and 5, Oliver and Conway. My husband is 4th generation at his family business in St. Peter, so we are not busy at all. How I landed at Graif is kind of an interesting story because growing up, I always knew what I wanted to do, be an entrepreneur and own my own store. Never thought I'd buy an existing store, but that's kind of how it came about. Before I get into that, if you're not familiar with Graif Clothing, I kind of just want to talk about that a little bit because obviously it's changed quite a bit through the years. Used to be downtown. That's what most of those pictures are that you're looking at right now. Primarily, it was just menswear for, I would say, about most of its lifetime. Opened in 1924 to Matt J. Graif. He did men's and boys wear and typically just the everyday menswear needs at the time. He owned it and passed it down to his son, John Graif, who owned it. I'm not sure the timeline of how long each one owned it, but it was passed down to his son, John, who then sold it to Gary Kratzky, who happened to be John's son-in-law. So it did stay in the family for 3 generations, and then it sold out about 14 years ago to a gentleman, Randy Apple, who is the one who transitioned it from downtown to where our current location is, which most people know of Stoney's, but we're currently in the Stoney's building. About 10 years ago, he made that transition. And I guess you could say, you know, kind of just revived and gave Graif life again. What Graif does, what you see and what we offer. Currently, we do have 2 locations, but we still offer menswear. We still offer the tailored goods that most people are familiar with, your formal wear. We do the alteration services with it. We also do more contemporary men's and women's. When we open the new location is when the women's came into play. So what you'll find is your higher end, nicer, contemporary casual workwear, but also everyday casual, t-shirts, shorts, just really for any day life. So get back into switch my page here. Graif has been known to serving the community for its more formal wear. Like I said, we continue to do that. What we do majority now is weddings pretty much consume most of our business. We do proms, we do jobs rentals, we do your measuring services, your custom ordering, and then what Graif is known for is our customer service and personalized shopping, which is my personal favorite. If you come into the store, the one thing I want you guys to feel is just that you're being served, that you're being helped, you're assisted, and that you're getting the special treatment. And that's something that I know Graif through the years has been really true to. And it's definitely my passion that we continue that effort. My story with Graif, I have been familiar being around the area. I've been familiar with the store all growing up. My dad used to shop there. You know, it's something that wasn't new to me, but I went to school at the Art Institute in Minneapolis for fashion retail, merchandising, and buying. Like I said earlier, I was always interested in owning my own store. So that was my goal, is to get my degree and then open up a boutique like a lot of women want to do. And it wasn't until I was working up in the cities that I was on maternity leave with my first child that I ran into Randy Apple, who had just opened up the store a few years earlier here in Mankato. And after they transitioned. And I ran into him and I started chatting, and he was asking me about what I'm doing. And because Randy was a mentor of mine during college, we partnered a lot and helped with a lot of my school projects, and somebody I just always had admiration for. And when we were chatting, he's like, if you ever decide to put your job up in the cities, I'd love to have you work for me. And it was when I went back after maternity leave for 2 weeks, quit my job, called Randy, and I said, I'm ready. Like, he's like, well, I wasn't prepared this quick, but he made room for me. Randy owned the store at the time, but he also does wholesale clothing. So he had another operation here in Mankato that was the back end of clothing. And he wasn't prepared for me, but he made room for me. So I actually worked at his wholesale warehouse, and then I worked at the store too. Kind of evolved into where he was like, can you actually just run the store for me and just take it off my hands, which is what I did, and I loved it, and that's what I went to school for. So without owning a store, I felt like I was owning the store. Fast forward about a year, we were doing an event one night, and Randy made a joke that he was too old to be doing these events. And it was when I was 6 months pregnant, and I made a joke to him about, let me just buy it from you. Not being serious, that actually happened. Literally 3 months later. I had just had my baby, and we were signing the papers, signing over the store papers, while Randy was rocking, my 1 month old, passing the store along too. So definitely underprepared for how crazy life was about to get, but we made it through. Fast forward another 6 months, really excited, owned the store July 1st, and then February 2020 happened, hit with the pandemic. And my husband jokes, he's always like, why didn't you have that in your business plan? But it was a challenge, to say the least, not prepared for it. Started off the year 2020, January, just excited, get really familiar with the background, the industry in general. And instantly within a month, I'm having to completely switch everything, having to lay off my entire staff. I'm trying to, people are still getting married, we still have weddings. How do I still do this, but we can't have an open business? In a silver lining, everyone always says it must have been really rough, and it was, to say the least. But looking back, it led to so much more than I could have imagined, but that I don't think I would have accomplished if it wasn't for the pandemic. One of the biggest things is I had to be creative. Like most businesses, you got to be creative. And it led to our growth of our social media. It led to our live sales, which was huge for us. It led to online, which we never had online before. And it led to me just trying to think of new creative ways to serve the community, serve the people in a unique fashion. We did do some private shopping. I had a lot of customers, who felt bad, and they would say, can we just do some private shopping just individually? And I just opened the doors, and I would go into the store every single day at 10 o'clock. And for about 4 hours, I'd get lunch somewhere locally, try to be creative, and then I would go home and get the kids. That was my everyday during the pandemic. But during those 4 hours every day, I'd go into the store. I started contemplating ideas. Everyone's doing social media, everyone's doing live sales. It's all over Facebook, it's everywhere. What can I do different right now to grow the business when we have no business? And my mindset was, let's open a second store. And Owatonna is our second location. We opened that in 2021, April 2021. And to say that the pandemic wouldn't have happened, we would not have Owatonna. So it's been a great journey for us. It'll be the second ever location of Graif, I can say that. But everyone asks, why Owatonna? Owatonna has been a huge customer base of ours since a menswear store over there closed. So opening it up just brought in how much we can serve Southern Minnesota. And it's been a great community to be a part of, and just really helped the image of Graif grow even larger with what we're known, with what we're doing. So when people ask, like I said, with the challenges of COVID, a lot has come out that we went to. Everyone asks me still what our challenges we're still facing. And obviously, like everyone, hiring, staffing is probably one of the biggest challenges. But in the clothing industry, you go to shows and you buy clothing 6 months in advance, as opposed to just mass-produced apparel that you see at corporate stores. So one of the biggest challenges are that you are ordering stuff 6 months in advance at different states, and then nothing's coming. Your promise is coming, you're sitting there, you're waiting for the transitions. So it's led to a lot of creativity on the store's part to how do we figure out, how do we get fall out with no fall coming in? How do we get spring out with no spring coming in? So it's just led to a lot of new creative ideas of how we do business completely. Another big challenge that we have right now, or what we're facing, is weddings are through the roof. Everyone didn't get married, now they're getting married. And it's been, I was just telling earlier, just the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday weddings are through the roof, and we've never experienced the wedding industry as crazy as it is right now. And with that, we still can't get product. So I'd say that's another biggest challenge that we're facing right now. But another little side part, a lot of people ask me, aside from just being a business owner, is people are always interested in my story is, well, I'm obviously a young woman who owns a men's clothing store that has a huge history here in Mankato. How do I overcome those obstacles? And I guess I don't look at it as like, I'm a young woman, you know, that shouldn't be a down thing. It's somebody, I have vision. And I would say that's the most important thing, is having the vision for the store's success. I want to keep it as authentic as possible, but with bringing new modern day like outlooks on the business. But that's always the number one question I get. Being a woman, you're young, how do you overcome these challenges? And I wouldn't say that there's many challenges. It just leads to more creativity. Like I said, I'm very motivated. I have very much entrepreneurial mindset. I have really big visions, and that's what I focus more on than being a young woman and letting that get down on myself. Obviously, another question I get all the time is, we have 2 boys. How do you manage a family with a working husband? And again, you just make it work. You make it work. You have a community that is by your side, making sure you're successful and supports you. You have family by your side that make sure that you're successful. And the more every obstacle I get over, it just makes me that much more determined to take on bigger tasks, take on more challenges. That's my next part. So what we're seeing now is business is bouncing back, which is great. You know, everything is actually pretty good, to say the least. Business is back. People, I think, have really missed the customer service side of sitting from home and not getting that people interaction. Everyone ordered from Amazon for a few years and realized that, you know, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. Convenience isn't always better. So we're seeing just the natural knack for people wanting to be out again, doing events again, the weddings, like I talked about, through the roof. What I've really noticed is a lot of people are saying, well, no one's dressing up anymore. People are sitting home. And you know, to be honest with you, we have been doing more tailored services. So that means suiting, dress wear, than we have probably in the last 5-6 years. I think people are appreciating getting dressed up again, that feeling of getting ready for the day, the feeling of making yourself feel put together. Really, you notice, you know, that makes a difference, rather than when you've been sitting at home on Zoom calls in your pajamas, throwing a sport coat on over that. I've seen a lot of those videos. So business is back, which is awesome. We are continuing just with social media. The new focus for us this year is going to be changing up our selection of our men's and women's. It is a process, like I said, you know, everything's really far in advance, but that's kind of the new direction that you can see. Still very true to the history of Graif, but just changing up a little bit here, meeting more needs in Mankato. Mankato is a community that is thriving, but at the same time missing niche areas for just everyday clothing general needs. So I'm pretty excited to see where the next 5 years is going to take us. I hope for no more pandemics. I hope that the success of, you know, everyone wanting to come back and focus on, you know, the service that's provided, especially with everyone's commitment to growing their own town and where they are. I think it's just going to continue to keep getting bigger and bigger.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, including our audience at home?
Yep.
Did any qualify for any COVID lost revenue money?
We did get the PPP. And then my husband did get a few grants, which was quite helpful. Right now, there's a lot of grants that we applied for during COVID that we were denied, that a lot of those specific givers are going back through, and just recently one went back that denied us and then actually approved us for. So that was kind of a nice little, you know, everything. It is still a challenge keeping up with the bills, and you're still kind of playing catch up, especially since we opened the store. The PPP was huge for us. The best, the nicest thing, I shouldn't say the nicest thing, the unemployment for my staff was probably the hardest thing for me. I'm such a family-oriented person that my staff is my family. So to lay them all off and say, I'm sorry, I'm gonna do my best to help you, the unemployment and then the stimulus for them was rewarding to know that I didn't have to worry as much about them. But we were able to take advantage of a few of them. Yeah.
What percentage of people do you have, say, over 40 age group versus under 40 age group? And how has inflation rate affected your business?
So first, the demographic, because we offer so much, we're doing the weddings, we're doing the women's wear, and then we have our past history of those committed loyal customers that have shopped with Graif. Right now, we are seeing the transition of our demographic into more of the 35 to 50-year-old range. I would say just with everything going on right now, I would say about 60% of our business is under 40. The other percentage are more of the business professionals here in Mankato, which do range from about 50 to 70, depending on occupation. I like to kind of segregate different parts. Our tailored goods, our suiting, that demographic is specifically more of the 40 plus. Where we're seeing the transition to the younger is with our weddings. Obviously, that's a lot of traffic coming in. They're seeing what we have to offer. But our contemporary men's and women's wear, that's more focused for the younger, and that's where we're starting to see more of the younger demographic come in. Like I said earlier, I think due to the fact a lot of people are used to Graif and know what to expect when they come in, but people are now exploring more of, I guess, just for us in Mankato, what Mankato has to offer. You're starting to see the smaller businesses thrive. You're starting to see more boutiques pop up. And that's a commitment on the community in itself, but that is where the younger kids are starting to come because they're realizing that's more, they're getting more out of that than traditionally going to a mall. So it's kind of depending on, where you look at in the business, but I do see it continuing to kind of be more, my focus is more to the 40 to 60-year-old range, but it just kind of comes with it depending on the topic of what they're coming in for. Inflation, that's going to be more on the back end. That really started to affect us I would say just within the last 9 months. Like I said, a lot of our stuff is pre-ordered and you pre-order at price. And now these companies are facing challenges of where they're having to air freight their stuff over versus shipping or boat freight. And so we are getting hit with the cost of that. They bring it in, and if you want your product, you have to pay more for it. So to say that it's been a challenge of, well, who pays for it? Who does what? How do I manage that? The shipping costs in general, just from everyday vendors, has gone up. And on the front end, the consumer, you're going to see more of a reflection of that in the beginning of next year. It happens so quick when you're starting to see it on the back end. It's hard to just do a complete switch to the consumer because they're already at a certain cost. We already, like weddings, for instance, they're already booked at a certain cost. And as much as our vendors are making us pay more, it's hard to do that to the consumer. So on the front end, it's going to be a slowly transition, but I will say next year, you will see prices. I mean, like we're seeing everywhere already, the prices will be going up just in general on everything. Yeah.
Online presence, if you do actually people order online, and have you considered doing a direct manufacturer to the purchaser to cost them?
Yes and no. Yes, we do have online. We did sell online specifically during the pandemic, and when we opened our second store, it really messed up our inventory and our systems that communicate with our online presence. I had to completely take it off. So my focus by the end of this year is to get our online back up and running, because that was very successful for us, and it's a whole other avenue of business, e-commerce, that we're missing out on right now, that we did so well with for a few years that we need to get back. I know it's a successful avenue for us. A lot of the challenge before the pandemic was that we had online. No one really shopped it because with us, it's a product that you want to come in for the service, touch, and feel. That's the biggest difference with us, because you know what you're getting, but you also don't know what you're getting, as opposed to an Amazon type of situation. So we will have e-commerce up and rolling hopefully by the end of this year again. And as far as directly from the manufacturer to the consumer, we've thought about it. It creates challenges in that it's all based on need. If a consumer needs something within a specific time frame, because our stuff is bought so much in advance, we can't rely on the vendor side, the reliability, without it coming to our store first and then getting it to the consumer, because we can't trust right now how the shipping is when they say it's coming in. So sometimes it's easier just to take the control, have it come to us, and then communicate with the consumer from there, rather than direct from manufacturer to consumer.
As you work to get into a different clientele, so to speak, or expand that, have you joined with like the Old Town Association and other organizations in town that help get the word out through partnerships? And have you done anything, I don't know what your husband's business is there any way to collaborate with your?
He's real estate insurance.
Okay, probably not.
So, let him stay over there, but, no, we're members of PNG. They were, great. They're still such a great avenue for us, a great resource for us. But partnering with the Old Town Association, I have a lot of friends that own businesses in Old Town and just in general around Mankato, that my biggest thing that I love doing is collaborating. And with how crazy this last year has been, it's kind of dwindled back a little bit, but that was another promoter for us during these last few years, is just the collaborations here in town, that everyone is so committed to making sure everyone's business works. But we do a lot of that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had a speaker last week that he said his textiles were coming out of China. Is that what you're seeing as well? And do you buy your product from certain countries where you feel the textiles are better?
Yes, yep. Most are out of China. China is still very hit or miss. The factories, that's where we're still seeing a lot of delays as far as, they're operating, they're functioning at their peak capacity. A lot are not. I have switched. It all depends on the brand and where they're focused from. We have a lot of Italian that it's obviously a little bit more expensive, but I have switched more to that because you're getting better control with it. It's a little bit more reliable. Obviously, it's a better product, and it's hard because you want to find things that come from different areas. So it's always a catch-22. You know what you're getting when you're buying something that's coming out of China, because it's a little bit more price effective, but then you're also dealing with all the hurdles from that. When I go to market, that is one of my questions with each brand. They all have their own sourcing, where they source from, and that's always a question of mine. And then I talk about what their methods are for shipping and delivering, just to be a little bit more sure when I do open a new account or when I do work with the brand. So a lot of French Canadian brands have started opening up. They keep their warehouses pretty close by. One of our best brands is right up in Canada. So a lot of Italian, a lot of French goods, and those I found have been more sought after for me anyway, versus sticking with companies who are primarily focused with manufacturing in China. Yes. All right. Yeah.
One question about the trade show. Do you end up going to trade shows, or are you doing a lot of that online?
No, I tried doing it online and I hated it during the pandemic. I bought some stuff and I got it in. It was not what I was expecting it. So I just said never again to that. I go to all the trade shows. I go every February. I'm going to Dallas for one day, Friday, to work women's lines. But I go to Chicago and North Carolina and Vegas, and then Dallas is a new one for me. A lot of the menswear industry and the women's industry is very different. Women's is much more saturated. It's always a competitive market. So I try to focus more on finding those more individual lines that I know are a little bit more traditionally for me, it's always the relationship I have with my vendors. So I look for that for the women's. The men's line, it's old school. You have a relationship with the vendor. You typically buy a few lines from that one vendor and you keep a relationship with them. A lot of them actually come to our store and show me in the store. which is what I have the rest of this week up until Dallas. Ben.
You see more and more like stretch or total stretch shirts in there?
100%. Yeah. I would say about 90% of what you'll see next year is a side or going away from cotton shirts to four-way stretch.
What was this question?
Just in the stretch of the shirts, the changing of the shirts from, now you're seeing a lot more of the fabrics with the stretch in it for men.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Years ago, many years ago, this was a club of men only.
Mhm.
You saw a picture of them, everybody was wearing a suit and tie.
Yep.
Now look at us. And nothing about the women, but look at the guys.
Yep.
I can't imagine you sell very many suits and ties.
No, like I said, a lot of people are surprised, or a lot of people say, well, you must not be doing a lot of suits and formal wear. And like I said, this year has been more formal wear over the last 5-6 years that I've seen. And like I said, I think it's because you did, before it was a chore, you were forced to do it, you had to do it. Now people are doing it more for entertainment. There's knowing that when you get ready, you feel better, more put together. I would say one of the biggest challenges I actually see is when you go get a suit, you're familiar with the process. We'll have young adults, college kids come in and they have no idea what the process is of getting a suit because they're used to off the rack, and that's obviously not what we do. As opposed to before, you would go as a boy, get your suit and grow up with the process of getting a tailored suit. But it's fun now because we're starting to see a lot more high school come in, getting their first suit experience, learning what it's all about and how you feel. And then they're more familiar with that when they come in and they actually need a suit for a special occasion. But this year, like I said, has grown drastically with the formal wear, but it's more entertainment driven, not occupation driven. Mhm.
So we know that a lot of the style, fashion comes out of Asia, Japan, South Korea,
Mhm.
they're, and then it exports, and it moves in, so it takes a while to get here. So do you look at that and find fashion forward way to know that, you know, the suits that are coming up are going to get it, they're going to be colorful, let's see all those kinds of things. So do you buy that way? Do you wait for the wave to get?
Yes and no.
You can kind of restate the question.
Oh, so she asked, basically, when I go to market, am I focused on how fashion forward things are in different countries? Because obviously they move a lot faster, especially when it even comes to the US, getting to the Midwest. So when I do my buying, I do focus on very fashion forward looks and ideas. I still have to keep it all within Mankato and what Graif is known for offering. I like to keep it authentic. Like I said, I don't try to get too into the fashion forward styles you see. It's so different with men and women. Men, I probably hold myself back a little bit more and be a little bit more on the conservative side, and will slowly introduce styles and trends. One of the, like you said, with suiting, much more fitted, much more tailored. You know, that's something that we're gonna probably see for a while now. It's so just influenced on social media, and when you see news reporters and new people coming in and asking for it. But at the same time, it's something I like to make sure that we're keeping true with, you know, when you're investing in something, that you keep it, that it's a long lasting thing, not just a trend specific thing. Women's is a little different. Women's, you probably see a little bit more of the fast forward fashion, get on the trends a little bit more with that, a little bit easier, but it's always evolving and always changing. So it's easier to switch things. But when you go to shows, you can just about see what the trends will be for the next season, because almost every company almost does the work for you as far as what will be trending. And because you'll see it in almost every single booth. And so it's usually pretty apparent in what they think will be popular, and then you go based off of that.
Yeah, have you been seeing more of her friends, nieces, nephews, weddings and proms and stuff? I've heard more people are going to suits instead of tuxes.
Yes, yes, yep. Weddings in general, I mean, everyone in the industry talked about it last year, how 2022 is probably gonna be the biggest wedding year in the wedding industry for probably the last 40 years. Very true. Everybody is going with the less formal, traditional tuxedo rental and doing more of the suit purchasing, more casual. During COVID, everything was very casual. It was the barn weddings, it was the outdoor venues, it was very casual. People are wanting the more traditional look now that they're being able to have weddings in venues. However, they're steering away from the traditional tuxedo looks, doing more suits because it is more casual. It's more with the times. So it has been a big transition. We do more suit package weddings where people purchase over rentals.
All right, well, thank you very much. I would say that the wedding that I was at was a little more formal, I thought, but the young people who came to the wedding were in suit coats that were much more colorful and I think a little more out there than some of us are used to. So that's just my take on things. Thank you again. And next week we will be out at our Kiwanis Recreation Park. If you remember that, along Highway 169. Laura Stevens and Paul Peterson will be presenting. And then I've also asked Joe Grabinowski from the city of Mankato to come out and just speak a little bit about the parks if we've got time for that. The WOW Zone will be catering our meal, so there'll be a box lunch for folks. And hopefully everything will go well. I see there's a slight chance of rain, but Denny, you want to get on that? Make sure, yeah, no rain next week. And all right, well, thank you very much. We will wrap things up with number 6, when Kiwanis